Well, seems I recorded for 2.5 hours and completely drowned myself out with my own AI generated accompaniment. Uh, I guess I should have checked the sound levels on that before just going ahead for 2.5 hours. Doing something different tonight. We got picture in picture, as you can see. Basically, lower picture is my digital screen. That way, you can see what I'm drawing. Sort of like that. Um, sorry if I sound really defeated. It's just I talk so much. The only thing you could hear is this blasting in the goddamn background. Which before it was way louder. But while we're here, let's talk about it. So we made several AI generated background musics because I didn't want to have someone else's music. I wanted to make my own. This was the first time I'm using Suno version 5, and the first time I'm using and still feel very uncomfortable with that level of sound. I just want to make sure you could hear me, and I'm not being drowned out. But the audio levels I did previously were pretty good. But the feedback to my mic to my headphones is not very good, unfortunately. But basically, I made a period piece music to draw to, and now that you can see me draw, I was drawing this for the last 2.5 hours. Documents. Under OBS. Duel of the Kings. So this was a sort of in canon or in universe. Tonight I'm drinking Pabst Light. It's kind of hard to con, but I really enjoy it. I actually do enjoy PBR, like unironically. It's like I despise that hipsters made it into a meme beverage. Sorry, I still feel like I'm being drowned out by the music. So I don't want to keep decreasing it because then you can't hear it at all. But yeah, I just don't want to get drowned out again. But so yeah, well I drew this. It's a misty morning when the kings met for the final duel. Zoom in here. We got Gowan the second, and I was explaining that his suit is very frumpy and baggy, so he could move a little bit better. God, it just feels like such a waste of my time. Sorry, just spend that much time talking and drawing, and I'm completely drowned out by my damn background music. And it's still on my headphones. Sounds like I'm drowned out by my background music. But he showed up with a spear and the Black Banner, which is at that time was the Tech Nation's flag. And of course, I went over. There was one with the humble. That was part for consideration, but it rejected because most of the Baylors don't even believe the humble is real. Then there was one that is an inverted triangle, but that one usually just symbolized that there was a triarch presence in the building. It wasn't really the symbol of the technation. The black banner was. And so the kings are meeting here, and I wanted to go over the difference between Nork and Tech Honor briefly. And like I said, I really like this picture-in-picture because you can actually see what I'm talking about. So you got Tech Honor. And Nork Honor. Now, Tech Honor is based on meritocracy and individual ethics and morality. But in warfare, techs engage in total warfare. So basically, honor does not apply anymore. It is about killing the enemy. Because they learned a long time ago that when you have a morality system that you're applying to warfare, warfare is always a Darwinian pursuit. If you're not able to engage fully in warfare, then don't engage in it. Otherwise, you're just going to lose, because the other side is going to initiate a race to the bottom of the barrel, ethics-wise, and always beat you there. They like to say, the texts like to say that cruelty is a martial art. That's why the Norks remember Lord Hykos here so much worse than Gawain II, because basically after the Queen was murdered, Gawain II sort of disappeared for a month and then came back with some cool weapons. But Lord Hykos continued the onward chug of riding up on people's property, asking if they keep slaves, and they're like, if the answer was yes, they're going to have a very bad time. And he would punish the slave owners very, very harshly, but he would essentially treat them the way that he imagined they treat their slaves, which is just poorly. Now, Gawain II had another triarch come back with him, which was Kulik here, and he came back as sort of a stopgap to make sure Gawain II kept his promise that he made to the triarchy, that even though he made this more personal, he's not going to continue to punish the Norks just because he can. And that he's going to hold to his deal that he allegedly made with Niz Krent, is that if you show up on the battlefield and fight me, whatever the outcome, that's the end of it. A king's duel for the fate of Octon. But Kulik was very much afraid that, just like his father, Gawain II would go batshit crazy and just march on to Octon regardless. Because he had the manpower, he had the wherewithal, he could have easily done that. But Kulik sort of called his bluff when he said it, if you made this personal, then make it personal. You just want Niz Krent dead, correct? It's like, let's put your money where your mouth is, challenge him to a duel, and if he accepts and you win, that's the end of it. There will be, of course, the side benefit of they will agree to no longer engage in slavery, and they will never make war with the Tech Nation or its neighbors. And that was something the Trox definitely wanted in there as an agreement. It's like, do not come after us because we help the techs. Like, do not do that. So he basically just came back as sort of not a memento mori, but a memento, I guess, sanium. Remember sanity, basically. It's like, just remember you're here allegedly for one person. Now, as a Triarch, of course, his armor was not made yet by Lord Hykos. Lord Hykos is the one who figured out how to forge Humbonium. And the first test bed was his own faceplate, which he received a piece of the Humble's hinge as a birthday gift, or a birth week gift from Gawain II. To play around with and to forge with, and he was able to figure out a way to make it into a protective face mask, and more to the point, sculpt it to his own face. Now, Kulik, as you can see, really doesn't want to be here. Like, he considers his presence here to be just in case. I may have to use a circle tool for that. So it's just going to be a lot cleaner. But I really like this picture-in-picture system because it allows me to draw. I'm not having to fuck with a green screen or any of that. I can just sit here, talk, and draw. Wait, was that last one full saturation? Yeah, it was. So, I want to talk a little bit about post-war. Now, the next Sunday is going to be all about Revenge of the Forsaken. We're going to be colorizing the first 3 volumes of Revenge of the Forsaken, because it's going to be the right time period to do so. It's immediately after this duel. But I wanted to talk about some things that happened immediately after this duel. I also want to talk about the Yellow Sash. Is that I briefly mentioned it before, that it was considered to be post-war Nork propaganda because it painted Gawain II as like an evil sorcerer or like an evil wizard. But basically, King Nizkrent had a lot of sex slaves. And according to her own account, his favorite was the main character of the autobiography of the Yellow Sash. If you remember, the Yellow Sash is what Nork slaves wear to signify that they are slaves. She was basically a feral witch. She, like Korra, did not know that she had powers until basically she kept having reoccurring nightmares every time that she would sleep with King Krent about King Krent's future. She saw his horrible death of impalement, is the way she saw it. And she kept having nightmares about what she called the precipice. It's this craggly, dark, black stone, like dilapidated castle on top of a tall spire of a hill. And there is a storm coming, which is analogous to the Tech Nation, its army coming. But the storm had a creature flying around in it, sort of like a dragon, and it would speak to her and say things that really disturbed her. And she would tell Niz about it, and of course Niz always found her dreams to be entertaining to a certain point. But when this creature, this dragon-like creature, landed on sort of the balcony that goes to nowhere at the top of the precipice, it took the form of what she referred to as a tween beast. It's neither man nor Hazayan. Some sort of weird, like an owlkin, or like a, what do they call it, in D&D, the bird people. What the hell are they called? I mean, I have to Google it real fast, but So, not like they are now with just like feathers for hair, but otherwise humanoid. Like way more like the biological equivalent of Gawain II's armor here. And it was in fact Gawain II, because he was gifted a copy by Lord Jast in one of the many care baskets they would send to each other on the anniversary of the defeat of his Krent, because Jast never liked Krent. He sent a copy of Revenge, previously sent him a copy of Revenge Forsaken, and he sent him back a copy of the Yellow Sash. And it had a question scribbled in the first page, in the sort of the blank page for the autobiography, or for the autograph area, that most novels have. And the question was, is this true? And of course, Gawain II never has ever lied to Lord Jast about anything. So he read the Yellow Sash, and basically it's a slow burn psychological game that Gawain II was playing with this Ada girl. That he wanted her to pressure Niz into fighting him, or at the very least surrendering or making some sort of mistake that he could exploit on the battlefield. And so as the tween beast, he would sort of like terrify her into coaxing him into, either accepting a duel or making a mistake on the battlefield. She would, of course, wake up from this dream state and just be screaming holy murder like a night terror. And of course, that would disturb the king's sleep, because he's right next to her in bed, and he would have her punished. And eventually Niz called her bluff and was like, okay, you think that this tween beast is Gawain II. Tell him the next time we are both on the battlefield, because sometimes Niz would be back of the line and be watching things with binoculars or a telescope. Tell him next time that we're both on the battlefield and he sees me, ride back and forth across the length of his army 3 times and then salute. And then I will believe that you have actual, metaphysical communication with Gawain II. So the next time would be the retaking of Fort Cap, which Niz and his entourage could be seen from a distance before rallying the troops. And Gawain II saw that and then rode back and forth across the army he had staged to retake it 3 times. And then saluted, very much like you see here with the improper salute. Because normally with a tech salute, you snap your hand across the other bicep and then arc out in a fan-like motion to this 90-degree erect hand, palm out. And that is the actual tech salute. But because he's encumbered by a spear, he's giving a one-handed salute, an improper salute is what they would refer to that as. Kulik, of course, did not salute Niz. He never talked to Niz. Basically, saw him get killed, and was like, "Okay, can we eat lunch now?" Because again, he did not even want to be there. He was just there just in case. Lord Hykos basically was of the opinion that if Gawain II said, "Okay, let's continue to punish the slave owners," even after this, he would have been, "Fuck yeah, let's go." So he would have been down for continuing to pacify the Norks, basically. So then it would be a very awkward flex of power between Gawain II and Kulik here. Now, I mentioned Gawain II. I have a blueprint to make his armor in person, and that these are hidden pleats in the cowl, and that's the only reason that he can move his arms up like that, but still have good neck and shoulder protection. The plates become problematic here at the elbow, so what they had to do is sort of make a cup that sort of bulges out when his arms are down by his side, because otherwise he wouldn't be able to bend his elbow like that. It would expose too many parts that could defeat the armor, too many chinks, as it were. And of course, he's got all of his trebuchets masked up as a show of power. All of the tech army, that's what these little ghost figures are. They're way back in the distance because they don't want to feel like they're crowding the Norks, but they also want to see, because they've been fighting this whole time for a year in the winter and snow. And Octon during this time does have snow on the ground sometimes, but it doesn't usually stick. It also is very, very muggy and foggy. Is why everyone's sort of in the mist back there. So let's go ahead and draw him. Niz Krent. His armor is gilded, so it would be golden like this. I'm gonna go full saturation. He also was wearing a feathery cloak. Now, allegedly Ada was here, but she was like in the back entourage. But she refused to go anywhere near Gawain II and meet in person. But basically, Ada was eventually just thrown into the dungeon because the king was afraid that after what Gawain II demonstrated, that she might, slit his throat in the middle of the night and run away to join the tech army, like so many other slaves have done. There was a legit worry about that. So she went from being the favorite to being the outcast. And she was, of course, freed with all the rest of his sex slaves after his death. And because the nation lost, essentially, everyone had to give up their slaves. Now, that was a lengthy process. So immediately post-war, and we have some reference here. It's black and white, but you can still see. the detail. His helmet is gilded, and it's in the shape of a yellow bird. It's sort of a samurai Viking meets Wagner play, basically. It's more ornamental than protective, and as you see, his armor is not that great. He was not expecting to, have to ever really fight anyone in this armor, especially someone who is basically indestructible in a suit of his own armor. Because the Humbonium just will not give up. Now, I mentioned the previous recording, Gao II took the opportunity to stain his suit black. Before this, it was sort of a bluish green, sort of a teal. Because that's just the natural color of Humbonium. And of course, the blood splatter from, battles, it got on the suit. He didn't like the uneven nature of the color now. So what he did is he basically asked someone who was going to be executed for murder, hey, can I harvest your blood and use it as a dye for my suit? Which the murderer thought that was really morbid and fucked up. So he's like, sure, King, sure. He still believed it was a joke. But he sure as hell did bleed this dude like a damn deer or a pig after beheading him, and got a bucket full of his blood, and then put quick black, which is a stain that they would use for their metal and furniture, mixed it 50-50, and then smeared it all over the suit, and then rubbed it off, and guess what? It's now blackish gray. And if you go to the Modern Museum, the Modern Ulysses War Museum, his armor looks to be greenish black because the quick black has worn away, but the stain of the I think I made him too big. Damn it, I hate that. Because when you're doing this, the only way to go back is to just go back to the beginning. He was a little bit taller than Gao II, but he's very lanky and a very young man. I think. But, like I said, Ada can't prove anything because it's all psychic visions. Like, how do you prove someone was communicating to you through your dreams? Niz Krent was pretty damn convinced of it. That's why he threw her in the fucking dungeon, didn't want anything more to do with her, even though she was quote-unquote the favorite. But, there we go. Okay. Yeah, that's a little better. I'm going with detail. Now, it's interesting that, Niz did not return the salute that Gao II gave him. Which Gao II is like, okay, you little shit. Guess we'll just get this over with then. It's like Gao II tried to maintain some level of decorum with him. And then, of course, towards the end of the last live stream, what little bit survived, you heard their last words to each other before the duel. So that they basically are of the opinion that each other is a fucking narcissistic psychopath. But, after the war, there were a lot of freed slaves who did not want to reintegrate back into Nork society. Some of them wanted to live like Tex because the Tex were their liberators, and some of them even still had ties with old army buddies who they used to work for as boodle boys, basically paid servants, shine their boots, things of that nature. Basically gave them something to do that didn't require any type of military skill. Think of it as like a unofficial military aid. Now, the Nork lords mistakenly believed these boodle boys were literally just indentured servants. And it's like they thought that was very hypocritical because they didn't understand the nature of that. Is that they were being paid and they were doing this out of respect for the men and women who marched basically halfway across the world just so they could be free. It's like no one else gave a shit. No one else in Nork culture gave a shit. Like only the Techs were willing to do that. So basically on his helmet, it's kind of like a yellow bird is sort of squatting and brooding on top of his head, which is symbolic. Now, underneath this armor, it is of course steel. They're not bullshitting. Like it is steel armor, but it's just been gilded. And of course, the yellow bird cape. Feathery, very fluffy, very warm. Don't want to make the king have to stand there in the cold. Whereas Galactic second had been standing there for hours waiting for this asshole to show up. No blanket, no fucking cape, nothing. Kulik's complaining about the cold. Galactic second just standing there like a statue. It's like, my anger keeps me warm, sir. Alright. Just, like I said, very gold. Lots and lots of gold. Very gaudy. Norks are very gaudy. They like to show their wealth. Which Techs find disgusting because they're of the opinion that irks the poor and makes them feel lesser, and therefore they are more likely to become criminals because they don't feel like they're part of society. They feel like society, there is high society and then their society, and it's a big club and you're not in it. The Techs try very, very hard. Ooh. Come on. Get back in there now. Try very, very hard to stomp out that sentiment with the poor and the rich. Of course, there will always be elitist assholes, but the longer you can keep the upper and lower classes cordial to each other, the longer a civilization lasts. And with Techs, it's all about making sure that fucking civilization lasts, because you got to go back to the home world and retake it. Can't do that if civilization collapses. Now, even though he's got some samurai-like pleated or segmentada sort of thing going on here, his robe underneath it was actually bright blue. And it actually extended down a little bit, so it was sort of this color. Yeah. What we gotta do is his arms. Now, I didn't mean to go this long drawing this guy. I wanted to, like, you know, take a break But I got drowned out by my own damn background music, and I'm not gonna not put something up on Thursday night after what happened last Sunday. Like, I've got to put something up. Like I said, very, very gold, very shiny. It's like, he looks like medieval fucking C-3PO with like a bird on his head. Of course, Gal II didn't care. He didn't give a shit what you're wearing. He's here to kill you. So going back to Nork Honor. Um, like I said, there were Norks who were free who did not want to. Did I make his arm way too long? Yes, I did. He's got those gorilla arms. Swear to God. Let's bring that up a little. A lot of them started wearing black and dressing and acting like techs. And then there were some army, they technically are deserters, but Gal II never really officially ended the war with the Norks. He just sort of just left. So everyone there in Octon was like of the opinion, well, I guess we're decommissioned now. But they never really returned to Usalices to be formally decommissioned. So there was just a group of a few thousand techs who just sort of randomly lived in Octon now. A lot of them married freed slaves. But they got harassed off of the land that was formerly owned by the slave owners that they killed when they were in the military. And sort of like, as much as I hate mentioning that fucking group, the Ku Klux Klan, they would harass people off of the land that was captured by the Norks from killed slave owners and repatriate it to basically living heirs of those individuals. And that caused a lot of displacement and a lot of shifting around in the center of Octon. And what happened is that the Krons took in a lot of these refugee techs who had Nork family now, and basically like gave them a piece of desert land that they couldn't cultivate because they didn't have the technology to. But they said, hey, if you can grow stuff out here, you're more than welcome to live here. If not, it's best we can do. It's like, we won't harass you like the Norks. You'll live in peace, we promise. Pardon me. And they did. In the desert region abutting the mountains of Chronic, there are tech settlements that still wear black. They still wear the big hat. And they are now become dark-skinned because they're in the desert. But they are just direct descendants of tech army members who basically just went AWOL after King Niz got skewered, and Gawain II never really formally ended the war. So they didn't know what to do with themselves, so they just sort of stayed there. But like I said, the Norks said no. It's like, we don't want that long-standing cultural influence in Octon. Alright, he had very blue eyes. Now, there is a face mask that he could have put on for this, but he chose not to. No one really knows why. It's not like he really needed it for a joust, technically, but it's like, Dude, wear your full armor. Like, why are you doing that? This helmet is ridiculous. I've got to make it out of foam. It's just it doesn't quite hit right unless you see it like in 3D. Like I said, because it's so over the top. It's so non-protective. It's kind of bullshit. And to see you got a front and a side, I could easily make this out of foam. Of course, gilded, so it's gonna be spray painted gold. But like I said, it was in fact steel underneath. And his tunic underneath that was actually a bright blue. But you could see that his armor has massive holes in it. Gallon II's problem with his armor was movement, but it was very protective for scale mail. Incredibly protective, so because of the fact it's Harmonium. Now, behind him is a character I want to talk about because he's always been sort of the voice of reason. And he's mentioned 2 or 3 times in the original. Uh-oh. That tip keeps wanting to disappear on me. And unfortunately, they don't sell the tips for these anymore. So I may have to buy a whole new thing just to be able to afford it. Let's go with green. Now, Nork armor was very colorful, unlike Tech armor, which you can see it's black. So we're in our goth/emo phase. Whereas the Norks were very colorful. They had purposely wanted to stand out because again they flaunt their wealth. They want you to see how rich they are. Make that a little bit darker. Yeah, more of a hunter green. So this character is Lord General Frent. And Frent was basically the guy always saying, hey, just fucking give the techs what they want. Give them what they want, and then later on, we can just round up the slaves and re-enslave them. And then, what are they going to do? Invade again? Because he doesn't understand the text, is that, yes, they would have invaded again. Kind of want like a coolest type chin thing going. And then, yeah, and segmented on the back. Like again, like Roman coolest meets samurai. With the segmentation on the back. Yeah, the little, there we go. Alright. Now, Lord General Frent had on occasion pissed off the king by suggesting these very pragmatic things. Basically, just lie to the text. They were, oh yeah, we're totally going to free the slaves. It's like, yeah, not really. But again, even though he's a voice of reason, he's a bad influence because he doesn't fundamentally understand the text. And again, going back to tech armor, not armor, honor. To the Norks, saying we will get rid of slavery and then not doing that is totally fine because it's about power and station, not about integrity. With the text, it's about integrity. They want people to know that they do what they say, and that they will always be true to their word. Because otherwise, how would we ever trust these people? Integrity goes a long way. But to a Nork, again, it's about power. It's like they want something from us. They want us to free our slaves. So all we have to do is just make them believe that we are going to do that, and then either slow roll it or just not do it at all. And then we can have our cake and eat it too. We get the techs off our fucking back and stop murdering our damn slave owners. And we put them in a position to where we gaslight them constantly. And then claim that they're the ones being unreasonable when they say that we're not holding up our end of the bargain. Again, they're treating techs like they're Norks. That strategy would work very well on Nork lords. It would not work on techs because techs value integrity. Again, their honor systems are like oil and water. They have like nothing remotely in common with each other. Now, what you're seeing here is what a lot of actual medieval armor would have looked like. It's basically cloth-covered plate. Very rarely would armor actually be just naked plate like you see in movies, because it's going to rust and corrode very quickly unless you keep it polished. And remember, polishing was a lot more difficult back in the day. A lot of times they would use salt and aggregate to polish it. Not a very effective system. So, if you just, say, kept it dry and away from oxygen and light, more than likely it would not get as rusty. So a lot of this medieval armor that we think of as being shiny or even gilded actually would have been covered in cloth, especially if it was a laminate armor, or if it was made of segments of plate, especially scale mail, because it would hide the individual plates so you couldn't see where the holes in the armor are. Oh boy. There it is. So that tip is going to fight me. I may have to call it over the tip. Of course, the tip maintains distance from the screen so it can work properly. It isn't like a stylus on a phone. It actually has like a little transmitter receiver in the pin. Alright. Give him like a shredder vibe. Give him. See, this would have been the protective face mask he should have been wearing. And it goes down like that, and then it has a segment down there to further go down and protect the back of the head. Again, sort of samurai meets coolest. Now, as you might have guessed, Lord Frent's favorite color is green. But it is usually green and blue. He just chose to go a little more green today. And again, they would have different styles of like doublets and covers for this armor for different uses, like for certain ceremonies, certain events. That's not to say there were not medieval armors that were shiny and exposed like that, but it's not as common as you would think. Let's give that some segmentation. There we go. Now, Friend's advice was really bad because, again, he did not fundamentally understand text. You remember, their reaction to the king being kidnapped was to immediately send out a ransom. But the text did not understand this. They thought that they were literally, saying thank you for getting rid of a tyrant, essentially. And, oh, that damn tip. Unfortunately, it has to be able to move back and forth. It's got a little bit of a pressure sensor to it. It is really badly designed. I would not have designed... I would have gone with a system more like you have on like a regular cell phone screen, where a magnet can just activate it. That way I could just use a regular damn stylus, not this RFID crap. As you can see, it's not wanting to... It's not wanting to recognize it anymore. Now you'll notice a distinct lack of spurs. You don't need spurs with an ENAC. ENACs grab your feet. That's one interesting thing about Panjian armor, is that it has no spurs. The reason Fearsome Cockerel wears spurs, and they're on the back of his calves, is so the ENAC won't stab their hands. And he has a sort of older style, almost like long skirt of armor. I mean, it's like super tiny. Gotta hate that. We gotta rescale. Alright, so make this way thinner. There we go. That's going to look good. And the tip's gone. Well, shit. I really hope I have an extra one in here. Come on. Literally need tweezers to do this operation. And then, of course, tweezers don't like it. Come on, get in there. This is what I gotta deal with. Alright, good enough. Because it rocks back and forth, it loses that little friction edge that keeps it in. And then it just falls right out. Super, super useful. Now, like I said, Lord Frent was chock full of bad advice. Was he the reason that the king lost? No. He was basically doing everything he knew how to keep the king alive and in power. The problem is that none of them truly understood the nature of their enemy, because of the fact that their honor systems, which trickled down to their whole society, are so fundamentally opposed. Again, with Norks, it's like, yeah, we could be cruel to the enemy. We can't be cruel to each other, because that leads to societal decay. Again, they were so knowledgeable about the decay of society. Yes, blue eye. That they were literally willing to become austere simply to not piss off the pores. Give that sort of a wedge in the front. Alright. Their armor is supposed to be goofy and a little over the top because, again, it's a fashion statement as well as protection. Whereas the techs, unless it's like Gallon II, or Voss really is the one who commissioned this, it's more about protection than looks. It's like he could literally have just put a regular faceplate on this and it would have been excellent scale mail. Like put like a Menza more like that on it and a helmet more like that, but keep the coif. It would have been perfect. No problem. But he wanted to do something outlandish with it and something a little oddball that makes it look more intimidating. Now, after the slaves were freed, which first and foremost, that was not an instantaneous process. It wasn't like they just like, okay, I guess you're free now. It took months for all of Octon to comply with that. And again, there were individuals, very much like the early clan, who would go back and try to harass these slaves off of these liberated farms, these plantations, essentially what they were, and try to retake the land either for themselves or for the previous owner's family who had next of kin who survived. And they were formed from different groups, but the ones that most people remember were the Yellow Jackets. And it's because of the fact they mocked the slaves by wearing a yellow jacket. That's who went hence the name. And then they were not named after the insect. They were named after the clothing. Literally a yellow jacket. And they would come in the middle of the night, of course, masked, and fuck up your shit. They would steal your tools. They would make it impossible to farm that land. They would do everything short of kill you. They didn't want you dead. They just wanted you off the land. So, in that way, they were slightly better than the clan. Like, slightly. They're still fucking terrorists, though, but... And they're butthurt that they now have to, you know, work for a living. But, predominantly, other than, say, constant harassment from ex-owners of slaves, most freed slaves just sort of blended back into Nork society. Some of them would get tattoos on their wrist. You see Mr. Krent has one on both wrists of chain, and then either a broken link or a chain that would have gone to like bindings, broken. That signifies that you are a descendant of freed Nork slaves. Now, I mentioned about the techs who went to Chronic, and the Krons felt sorry for him and gave him a piece of what they thought useless land. But the techs had magic, basically. Remember, the Krons are a very primitive people. They're very superstitious. They actually do still worship the old gods. They're occultists. So they know that that psychics are just absolutely a real thing. Magicane is what they refer to them. The arcane ones. People who are psychic. They are magic. Wizards, witches, sorcerers, they're all real. It's just they're very, very rare. And every village has a shaman or a priestess who is a witch or a wizard, essentially, to help commune with the spirit world. He needs a big, big sword right here. That's what he needs. You know what? That's what the king's missing. The king is not armed. Galen II's armed. So is Hykos. Kulik probably has a pistol behind his back. One of those new ones that pierces armor. But I love the face, the accidental pixelation of. Can we just get this over with? And of course, the king is looking stoic, but a little bit of worry there, just a little bit. Maybe we're reading too much into it. But very pissed off looking as well. It's like, get off my fucking land. Just get fuck off. Back from whence thee came. Now I talked about, like I said, the techs who live in Chronic now, and they're still out there. They're sort of like the Hispanic cowboy, the gauchos. They're talked about on occasion, but rarely seen, because again, they live in a high desert, and they've adapted their way of life to living there. And the Krons, they can kind of survive in the desert, but not as good as the techs, because the techs again understand science, not just, as the Krons would say, they have magic. Now, you may be wondering, what are the Krons who fought Lord Hykos and were basically, Lord Hykos made it weird by shouting Buwanga? What do they think of the techs? They think the techs are fucking brilliant. And that scares the shit out of them, because they know that the Norks are really smart. That's why their technology is better than the Krons. That's why they're a threat. So if the techs are like exponentially bigger than that, or smarter than that, they're kind of terrified of techs. Again, some of them believe that they're tainted by Null because they have black feathers and like pasty white faces. They kind of look like depictions of daemons who are interdimensional envoys for Null. They're basically psychics who are Null's bitch monkey. The Null can't leave the void. She is the void. But she can create agents. Her children are the Destructors, sort of like just like in Ghostbusters. That they're ancient demigods who go around just culling civilizations, just to keep the man coming around to keep you down. Basically, Null hates all creation. Therefore, her children go around just destroying things, killing people, destroying things, because the old gods created light and life, and therefore everything that exists, even the planet we're currently standing on, is their creation and their domain. Once it concentrates like that and calcifies, sort of way you put it, Null can't enter this area. This is basically the gods' territories, the old gods. So she has to send envoys who are made of light and matter, but are just heavily corrupted by her. And usually that goes by the route of a witch or a wizard or a sorcerer or sorceress is trying to contact like a dead loved one, or talk to an elder god or something like that. And basically they get gaslit into agreeing to be a vassal for dark energy, and they get tainted by Null. And usually they end up killing a bunch of people and then themselves. But If Null really likes you, she'll make you one of her daemons, or one of her envoys, essentially, to go harass and corrupt other psychics to join her forces. And these guys are really powerful psychics, and they are not someone you should trifle with. In the Wizard Boo Explains to You series on my Suno account, he explains that an agent of Null will come by and would basically offer you a Faustian contract. Just hear them out and then just firmly, politely say no. Don't get in their face. Do not attack them. Do not attack them. You're probably going to lose. And basically hear them out, but tell them to fuck off. And sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't. And then you get fuckers like Doc and Galen, who are genetically enhanced psychics. They're weaponized psychics, essentially. They'll fight daemons, and they very quickly found out that they could be essentially just a severed head and still be a relative threat. So you kind of need to destroy them utterly. Which they can do that, but it's just god damn. Or you could just listen to their sales pitch and then tell them to fuck off, which is far more effective. You should really listen to the Wizard Boo. He's going to save you a lot of headache. Nice little cap. Yeah, nice little golden cap. Again. So this sword is called a Swick. It is basically a double-edged, very thick katana, but it has a very unique S-curve to it. See it? See how the handle curves like that? I've been told that there are Chinese swords that are similar to the ones I described. But I'm sure that every type of blade imaginable has already been created by some culture somewhere. Let's give it a sort of over the top. Yeah, a little brass attachment there. Brass there. Brass there. Or gilding, however you want to interpret it. But basically it has a very swoopy... And it's really like a cavalry saber. You're meant to fight on the back of Enoch with it. But techs rarely do that. When tech cavalry will harass the fuck out of you, but they won't stand there and cross swords with you, because they know the longer they're there, the more they're exposed. So they're more likely to stab at you and then run back. Again, that difference between Nork and tech honor. Norks would consider that to be a bitch move and be dishonorable. The techs would be like, oh, that's a great strategy, very effective. Just clasping that sword for dear life, because we're walking straight towards a dude who has previously just kicked the shit out of every one of us that's tried to fight him mano a mano. There was one instance where individuals had tried challenging Galen II instead of Niz Krent to try to get him to stop, basically. Because if they found out if you kill the king, you become a triarch, and then technically you could order his army to fuck off. Sort of a reverse of what Galen II is trying to do here, which is kill the Nork king and get them to submit and release their slaves. So a bunch of lords picked this very young, very capable knight called Bathic. And Bathic was a cheeky bastard and said, alright, I want to fight you. So I'm going to breach decorum of of dueling. I want to fight you mano a mano, hand to hand, bare knuckle, because he thought that Galen II would not have any hand to hand fighting skill. That is not the case. Voss made sure he could fight hand-to-hand extremely well. And believe me, he uses his weight and size to his advantage. So, they strip down from their armor. So basically, Bathic started out looking like this. And Galactic second literally said, quote, "Get this shit off me." And Hykos and several other warders picked off the armor as quickly as possible. And of course, he just wears his robes underneath this. So basically, pair of trousers, wraparound robe, sash. Tucked his sash in, turned it around like Hakambatis do. Basically, they're equivalent of Kung Fu masters. Took his crown off, handed it to Hykos. Hykos kissed it and put it over his arm like it's a big bracelet. And then it was on. First thing he did was grab Bathic by the fucking hips and bane his ass. Literally throw him up in the air and fucking break him over his knee. Because he's a tall dude, but he's very lanky. There's not a lot of meat on him. And, of course, broke his spine instantly. And the lords that picked him out to be their champion were like, oh shit. So Galactic II, motioned for a megaphone, which basically is just a big cone. Shouts back up at the lords. It's like, I hope that wasn't your best warrior. Otherwise, this battle is going to be, this day is going to be very boring. And the lords basically just took hightailed it out of there and got the fuck out of Dodge. And that from that point on, no one directly challenged Galactic II again. It's like, oh my god, even without his armor, he's a fucking powerhouse. Because again, Voss trained his son well. He wanted Galactic II to be fucking medieval John Wick, and he kinda was. And Lord Hykos was no slouch either. Very lethal individual. Entirely self-taught. You wonder how was he able to defeat a young Galactic II's warders. Self-taught. Just like the Queen Eos with her basically her carpet thrasher, or which is we would call nunchucks, or dual-wielding sticks. Completely self-taught. Pardon me. Alright. You know what? I'm going to... It's not a retcon, but on the site creation, I want there to be a crest. Something that lets you know that this is a general, not just... What if he had some bits of gold on his armor to let you know, say like a yellow bird's head swooping down, and then yeah, and then now, do yellowbirds fly? Not really. They fly about as well as a turkey. It's like, yeah, they can be airborne for a little bit. But for the most part, they are flightless birds. There we go, I like that. It's a little bit of gold. You're not out. You can't outgold the king, but it signifies that this isn't just a knight. Like this dude has some gold on him. He's a general. He's a lord general. But again, Frent is the source of all bad advice because he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. But he hasn't that Norm-like quality. Not Norm. Who is the name of the postman? Who's the voice of was it the pig in Toy Story? But I can't remember his name in Cheers. But he was a blowhard and he was a know-it-all, and he had a charismatic way of saying things that made it sound 100% accurate when it was total bullshit. That is how Frent was. He could make the most stupidest fucking argument sound totally reasonable and logical. He was just a master manipulator. And normally he thought that this was for the good of everyone until he started encountering the Norks, encountering the techs. And it's like, oh boy, they don't react like they should. Like, normally when I do this, people react this way. These guys don't do that. You know what? I need to give them some shadow. I just realized that they don't look like they're actually in the scene. That is too thick. There we go. Keep the directionality. Maybe a bit too intense. Yeah. Like, the least amount of opacity. Opacity? How do you fucking pronounce that? Again, it's a kind of omni lit scene because it is, like, say, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. It's basically like a few hours after breakfast. Again, foggy morning on the winter. You know what? Yeah, that's an interesting detail. So this in-universe painting is in the Great Hall adjacent to the throne room of the Palace of Octon. It was painted from memory, like I say, about 3 years after the fact by one of the knights who attended this. And Nork knights, I should say. And a lot of people say that it's really creepy. It's sort of like the Arctic expedition being torn apart by the polar bear. I think it's in Cambridge, I want to say. That during finals, that when they have testing in the Great Hall, they have to put a black, like, bed sheet over it because it disturbs the people taking the test. It's so graphic. But in this case, there's nothing really graphic here. It's just a bunch of rich dudes standing around in armor, essentially. Maybe it's the implication. Because you know what's going to happen to this dude. And it was a great shock when Niz was killed. Because the text didn't find it shocking at all. They pretty much were just handing out programs. Like, but it was the realization that they are not divine. They are not like gods on this Hazaya. There are other people who are just simply better. They are smarter. They are more determined. They are more just everything. And they just absolutely trounced your best guys. Pretty much this guy, Lord Hykos, made an example of every single fucker who stood before him. And it's just the realization that you're not the main character, essentially. That you're not a god emperor. You're just a rich dude with a nice suit of armor. that people listen to because reasons. There's also the realization that at any time the text could be like, you know what, fuck you, and just come back. And the texts love that psychological terror of, it's like at any moment, without warning, we could just do this again and again and again until we break you. And that stayed within Nork culture for a very long time. Uh, and sort of fueled later what would be the Baylor alliance between Phasia and Octon, basically against the Trox and the Tex, who they view as one and the same by that point. Although they really aren't. They are two separate nations, but by that time, yes, they were kind of cordial with each other. But again, about the painting, the people who examine it up close say that the devil's in the details, like how King Kulik looks just like, oh my god, we get it over with. The charismatic stance of Hykos, with Old Blue on his shoulder, like he's just holding a friend's fucking shovel while he goes to take a piss behind a tree. The demonic, like, frozen Menza he has, the face shield, which pops because it's just it's polished, almost if it's to say, take a good look at my face. It's the last one you'll ever see, technically. And then Gallon II himself, looking like, you know, a fucking bird tank. Yeah, like I said, in the expression on the faces, a lot of people are just really disturbed by it. Maybe it's the ominous atmosphere of it, but in universe, people try not to stare at it, and that's analogous to Gallon II's Black Velvet paintings that are portraits usually, that always have a very good lightness, but also a very intenseness about them. Something about the face coming out of the darkness, it makes it pop more. And of course, Gallon II was actually a really good artist. He painted many paintings. He even did battle murals. It's just that his, oddly, were always from first-person perspective. He was never in his own battle murals. And a lot of people always found that to be very interesting. And because it means that it's probably very accurate, because he probably is doing it directly from memory, just like this one was done directly from memory. Other paintings were done like decades after the fact. They were artist interpretations. But this dude who painted this was there. He saw King Niz get fucking skewered with this spear. And there are some historians who say that this is still a staged painting. They you know, wouldn't have gotten that close to each other. It would have been like shouting. But again, like I say, it has an in-universe like lore about it. And again, Ada, who was the main character of her autobiography of The Yellow Sash, she claims she was there. She saw the whole thing. But that doesn't jive with what other people accounted, is that she was still in the dungeon. A lot of people believe that she maybe astral projected there. Maybe. Or maybe she just dreamed the whole thing, which her dreams were rather prophetic and very realistic, which would cause her to have night terrors. So who really knows in the end? But back to I never got back to it. Lord Jas asked Gawain II in the opening page, the autograph page essentially of the Yellow Sash, is this true? Did you basically like try to psychologically or psychically torture Ada into forcing the king into a duel because she was a very close concubine of his? And Gawain II read it and then wrote back just under the same inscription and sent it back to Lord Jast with the next care package. She paints me harshly. In other words, yeah, I kind of did, but it wasn't as like creepy and stalkerish, as psychic stalkerish as it sounded, or as she had it come off. But then again, it is from her perspective, so who am I to say what she considers to be creepy and like over the top? Let's see. Now back here would have been the other lords of Octon, and they would not have been in armor because they're not fighting. So they would have, a lot of them would have been wearing like long cloaks and whatever. I will do them eventually, but again, this is the second time I recorded because I didn't want to be blasted out by the background music. But in Octon, after the war, was pretty bad for everyone. In Ulysses, it was equally bad. The Triarchy tried very, very hard not to make it the public's problem, but it still happened. The Commonwealth blew out a lot of farms. They were over-farmed, and that caused starvation. And it caused a lot of family farms to have to sell. They would lose their ancestral farms. They've been farming pretty much since they jumped off the Humble. And that's how the beginning of Revenge of the Forsaken starts, is that Cora Henchild's farm is one of these farms that blasted their soil out and it's got no nutrients left and just won't grow anything anymore. Because they wanted to sell all of that crap to the techs so they could can it and send it down to the army. The duel here really and truly just boiled down to a complete lack of mutual respect for each other's culture. I mean, that sounds like an absurdity considering, everything the techs did knowingly and willingly. Like murdering the slave owners, whatnot. But it's like, because of the two different honor systems, both of these guys feel like they are the honorable party here. No one believes that they are in the wrong here. And when that happens, like something like this is inevitable. Thankfully, it did eventually just boil down to this: two kings fighting. It could have gone on a lot longer. But in Ulysses, a lot of Nork Boodle boys, as they call them, they're basically paid helpers for army officers, traveled back to Ulysses because they want to see the city, this gleaming city they keep talking about, that their home that they're from. That is the first city. It's the first city built on Hesiah, and is the oldest city built on Hesiah. A lot of them also want to go to the Humble and see it, almost like a pilgrimage to worship at it. But they're very, very politely smack down and be like, yeah, the Techazians are not going to be okay with your yellow feathers. It's not going to happen. You smell weird. You look weird. It's like they barely like us going into the woods, and we're the same color feather as they are. But they formed a little township by buying up a piece of land in the ever-expanding south side of, more of the southwest side, I would say, of Solacese. And it's now referred to as Old Norktown, but it was called Norktown, and it was technically a township, similar to Balerment and Eperton. And they did pretty well for themselves. They didn't want to, like, you know, concentrate in one area, but it's like it's just so much easier to buy land if you have a concentration of like people who are already married to a tech, all living in the same area. So it created this pocket of just Norks who just sort of hang around each other. And it wasn't like they didn't like associating with the techs. They love the techs. The techs are their liberator. It's just, you know, you just tend to stay in an insular community that you're used to. Now, over time, the yellowness of their feathers got blackwashed, essentially, is what they refer to it. But they still, there are still a lot of people who are native to Norktown who have that tall, the long face, the long nose, very Nork features, but have black feathers, because over time they just kept interbreeding with techs and just lost them eventually. But on the anniversary of this date, and I'm gonna have to bullshit a date looking at PGH again, but I want to say, no, I'm not gonna say, because if I say it, I'm gonna have to retcon it. I'll look at PGH and get you an actual date for when this happened. It was in winter time, late winter, so it would have been towards the end of that year. So it would have been like November-ish, if you're going to put, you know, an Earth and month to it. I'm just going to save this real quick. Yes, wait a second. But, so the Norks had a little bit of problem with finding a place to live, because they wanted to settle down and actually own land, because of course they couldn't do that as slaves. What they quickly got smacked in the face of is the basically the anti-colonizing laws that were there to keep Trox out. They got hit with that. So basically you can't own land in Solacese if you're not tech, biologically. Or at least one of your parents was tech. So you sort of have dual citizenship. So they either had to find a friendly apartment building owner who would let them live there on rent, or they just couldn't own property. So again, what they did was they created a township with founding families, of which were interracial couples who then had half tech, half Nork children, because that's about the only way they could get that done. And then they created more apartments to then rent to the other Norks who were pureblood, but did not have a tech spouse to sort of basically get citizenship off of. There was some brief discussion between Kulik and Kulk about making an exception for the free Norks because of the fact they were helpful. But then they were like, we can't treat one Baler different than another, essentially. So we made these laws so that the rich Trox couldn't buy a bunch of property in Solacese and or in the Tech Nation, and basically make it, you know, Eastern Tetric, because they definitely had the money and the ambition to do that if they were allowed to. But by putting that stopgap in of you have to be a tech citizen or have tech ancestry, one or both, to own land, they weren't able to pull that off, not quickly anyway. But like I said, the economy crashed definitely in Octon, but in Ulysses it kind of slowed to a drag as well. Kulik was not happy about that, nor was Colt, because they were promised by this asshole that wouldn't happen. But the problem is that there was no real plundering going on. If you were plundering, yes, you can bring back all sorts of Nort gold and sell it to the Trox who actually value it. But there wasn't, because this was a policing action. It wasn't a traditional like war of attrition. So yeah, so nothing was gained by this other than we brought home like a bunch of disaffected freed Nork slaves. Oh, also, like a good sizable chunk of our army, like say 5%, just kind of defected to Chronic and became farmers. Yeah. They also took like a crap ton of their fighting skill with them, because some of those guys were like really good at fighting. Yeah. Like I said, bad times. But that sets up Revenge of the Forsaken for Sunday. Is that basically the economic downturn of this, and the fact that Tex never once plundered anyone anywhere, provably, and the fact that their economy went crap after this is proof that they didn't plunder, because if they did, like, why did their economy suddenly crash? Normally, war is a profit-making venture, but they didn't profit by this, like, at all. In fact, they kind of suffered. But the point was made, basically. It's like, one, you guys are not the main character. Two, stop having slaves. Like, stop doing that. So yeah, I think that pretty much sets up Revenge of Forsaken. Again, I'm going to get you an exact date of when this, because they do celebrate this in Octon. It's one of the few cross-national celebrations. Is the day that basically Nizkrent gets fucking skewered. Because the descendants of free Norks, they're about the only time that they'll come out and wear a yellow sash again, just to remind people. And of course, the nobility and upper crust of Octon still are kind of fuming about it to this day. So, and of course, the free Norks in Norktown, Old Norktown, celebrate it. They'll wear their yellow sash, the same in solidarity. And the Tech Army usually will do a victory lap around Ulysses, and sometimes, depending on if he's available, the Sovereign, who currently under Get Good and 8th Fleet is Admiral Brennick, will wear Gawain II's armor and lead the victory lap around the city. And yes, there was a victory lap around the city when they came back. And then Gawain II opened his helm when he got it to addressment perch and said dismissed, which allegedly was the official dismissal and decommission of the Tech Army. But then some really bad things happened with the veterans. One is PTSD is a thing. A lot of them just couldn't hack it in civilian life again. And a lot of them never learned a trade from their parents. Because they were too busy during those formative years fighting the Norks. So the only skill they have is just unaliving people. And of course, in civilian life, that's not a marketable skill. So, unless you're a criminal. So, organized crime went up. The worst case scenario was the Hawkers. The Hawkers were light cavalry, but they were armed with the Hawk Loop, which is basically a steel braided. Here, let me get you some visuals. Now, they would usually just wear a helmet sometimes and just a carapace. But basically, the hawk loop, you have basically a lasso with a little ring going through it. And then this was braided steel cable, which back in the day, as you know, was very hard to make, very hard to come by. It would then interweave into hemp rope at the end here. But this loop was incredibly deadly at full gallop if it got you, say, around the neck. Yeah, you're gonna, it's gonna tighten, and you're gonna have a really bad haircut, like all of the head off. This was part of the psychological terrorism of the Black Army, is that it wasn't necessarily about fighting you, it was about punishing you. And terrorizing you into compliance, which is free your damn slaves. So, the light cavalry, the Hawkers, would basically brazenly just jump into shield walls, lasso some poor bastard, and drag him back to their side of the lawn, where the first row of infantry would either stomp them to death or just take turns stabbing him, and then march over his corpse. Just to let you know that even if you're behind the lines, you're not safe. They especially went after officers and knights and lords that were behind enemy lines with this lasso. And Lord Hykos commissioned a group of what he referred to as hammer boys, tongue-in-cheek reference to his old job, of knights who were armed with basically sledgehammers, which normally were used to construct ramparts and take apart and put back together trebuchets, and would just literally hammer armored knights to death, right in front of the approaching army that got picked off and dragged by the Hawkers. But of course, these were very highly skilled riders and young men who lived and died on the back of an Enac. So they did have a marketable skill, which was raising and training Enacs for trick riding and especially military riding. But the Hawkers, also the old dual meaning of the term, went into hawk. They had to sell their bridle and tack, their uniforms, and finally their weapons, which not a lot of pawn shops won't have a use for a decapitation lasso like that, so they would have to then sell the steel back to the armory for whatever it's worth in its weight. And Gawain II heard about this and was like, okay, these guys were like our elites. They were the best of the best rangers. They would literally just balls to the wall charge into a shield wall, pick out some random dude and drag him out and make an example of him. Like, we can't have these guys be homeless on the street. So he issued a general statement to the public that all hawkers who are experiencing, financial destitution, come to the palace. I want to talk to you and meet you. So upwards around 1,000 people were in the Great Hall, all hawkers, all veterans. Lord Hykos and Gawain II addressed them and said, look, I'm going to be making a secret stables, because one of the big problems we had during the war was acquiring Enacs. Towards the end of the war, the Trox started selling prairie Enacs, wild Enacs, to the goddamn techs, who then had to break them in field to use them as a war mount, which of course did not work out very well at all. But because you have to raise them from an egg to make them a useful riding animal. Because wild Enacs don't want you to be on their back. They're like a damn bronco. But that's all they had, so that's all they could do. we're going to be making a state-sponsored stables to breed and maintain a force of our own cavalry ENACs that are trained cavalry ENACs. They're not damn prairie ENACs like the Trox sold us, that aren't broken in and won't let you ride them. I want you guys to basically run and take over that. But I also need you to not tell the other veterans about it, because I don't want them to feel like they've been left out. Otherwise, they're all going to form a big million-man handout chain, say, "What about me, boss?" But because of your exemplary service and specifically your training, I'm going to do you guys a solid for your service and basically make you all employed at this new stables. Well, of course, other veterans found out about this, and they did, in fact, go, "What about me, boss?" So, Gowan II had to basically start night schools at the School of Ulysses to teach all of these veterans who wish to opt in trade skills. So, and even to this day in School of Ulysses, the night schools are for adults to teach trades. And it's free because of the fact that these soldiers skipped basically the whole part of their lives where they would start out at a job and get skills that are marketable or become apprentices or what have you. They spent most of their time going to war, preparing for war, being trained for war. And now that the war is over, there's nothing to do. So, again, very, very bad times for both sides. And this war started a snowball effect that continued on basically until the Drawfee Imperium showed up and presented a threat so existential, everyone had to go, "Okay, we need to chill the fuck out and come together to meet this new threat. We can't keep killing each other anymore. It's interplanetary now. It's not international." And so in a weird way, the Drawfee Imperium saved the Panjians on Hazaya from annihilating each other in nuclear hellfire, because they were totally ready to do that just before they showed up. And again, I think that pretty much sets up for Revenge of the Forsaken. And it said Sunday we're going to be talking about Revenge of the Forsaken, that time frame of the sort of early progressive era. Again, progressive being incremental change over time, not the current fucking definition of it. Of transitioning into Val's reign. And in the Revenge of the Forsaken, he's kind of comes off as a little shit, which he does grow out of that, but gradually, with Korra's help. So, yeah. Hopefully I did not get trounced by my own audio again. And I'll see you Sunday.